Hi, this is Stephanie Stock with Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom. Today we are speaking with Democratic candidate Tina Maharath from House District number 3. Thank you so much for giving our viewers some time to get to know you a little bit. Maybe you could just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself before we get into questions.
Yes, so I'm Tina Maharath. I'm from the 3rd State Senate District, so I'm actually a native of Whitehall, Ohio. I currently live in Canal, Lancaster. I'm the child of refugee parents from Laos during the Vietnam War era. So Laos is a country that borders Thailand and Vietnam. I was born and raised here in this district, and I am currently your Democratic candidate.
Awesome. Was there one experience or moment in time where you kind of knew you wanted to get into politics, or?
Yes, so back in 2012, I believe, my friend had gotten shot. He was brutally murdered, but there was no suspect. It was a cold, hard case that was just left there in the piles and piles of files at the Columbus Police Department. So luckily at the time, there was a legislative day for Asian American and Pacific Islanders that was scheduled. So I went ahead and showed up. I was in Representative Michael Cinciano at the time's office, and I expressed my concerns that you guys are catching all these robbers and rapers and murderers for other ethnicities, but when it comes down to my Asian American friend, we have no idea what happened to his murder, and this is unfair, this is unethical, and this has a lot to do with media and political injustice versus doing the right thing and finding out who solved this case. And Michael Cinciano at the time was a state representative in the 18th district, and at the time I lived in the 20th House district. He didn't know who the kid was, what district we lived in, or anything. He just knew that there was a constituent that was very upset that we don't have any leads to this case, and he tried his best to go ahead and help us get a lead. So after that moment, I knew that I want to get in politics, because if we have a state representative like this who's willing to go above and beyond to try to get some constituents' concerns answered, I feel like that we can elect more people like this. So I went ahead and got involved in politics, got my first job in the U.S. Senate, and I just moved my way up.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always really kind of touching when you know, because there's so many people in politics that they just don't care. I mean, I can't tell you how many people we've contacted. You're not in my district. You know, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm like, what do you mean? The laws that you make affect the entire state. Don't tell me you're not going to talk to me. So it can be very disheartening when you come across people like that. But when you come across people that really care and make a difference, it inspires you to, want to do more and be more and also get involved in the process. So that's a very cool story. Is there a particular issue that's most near and dear to your heart, politically speaking?
Politically speaking, right now, the opioid epidemic is one that holds me well because of the concept that we have resolutions available. We have options to get this epidemic solved. However, it's all about party affiliation. What we need to do is go across the aisles, or go across both aisles, and get a resolution resolved. But there's one aisle who is influenced by lobbyists, and the other aisle who just doesn't have, I guess you want to say, the enthusiasm to go above and beyond, to go across both aisles to get a resolution. It's been an epidemic that's been going on since the late 1990s, and it's just getting worse and worse each year that we go, each year that our economic system is just failing hard. So it's one of those issues that I'm more passionate about compared to other issues in the medical field.
Yeah, and I do hear actually a lot of the candidates, even on the Republican side, the opioid crisis is a really big deal. If all of you guys put your heads together, it would really make a difference. But people need to look at research and various different alternatives that are out there that aren't even being considered because the pharmaceutical industry has such a hold, as you know, in the State House, nationally speaking, the media, everybody, they have a hold on everybody. So it makes it very difficult to talk about natural or anything alternative that might be helpful to people. So if we get enough of you guys in there, maybe we'll actually make some headway on that topic. What issues in your own life have made you more receptive to Ohioans concerned about informed consent and medical freedom particularly?
Specifically speaking, it has to do with the women's rights. Specifically is the controversial issue of abortions. So I was 20 years old when I had my child. I was young, I was reckless. I wasn't living an exactly great lifestyle because at the time, well, I was 14 years old when my mother and brothers died in a car accident when I lived abroad in France. So I had all this trauma in me, and instead of dealing with it, I was just a really bad, reckless young adult. And instead of seeking treatment, I just tried to find my own treatment. And eventually I ended up getting an unplanned pregnancy, and I had two choices. One choice was to get an abortion and continue living my reckless lifestyle, or the second choice was to go ahead and have this child and turn my life around, because I have a long family history of negative health conditions such as stroke, breast cancer, high blood pressure. So the chances of me ever having any more kids is slim to none. So I thought, if this is my only chance of having a child, I'm going to have this child and I'm going to turn my life around, because this child doesn't deserve to come into this world with my lifestyle. But it's just a concept that it was my medical decision between me and my doctor and not my legislators.
Okay. Now, as far as our organization goes, we don't actually, we have not dealt on the abortion issue because our primary focus is medical freedom in the realm of, preventative type things that are pushed upon us, not necessarily things that that we might choose. So we don't really get into the abortion issue, but it's good to know that that's one of the things that was important to you, because people are interested in that topic, definitely. I'm curious about some of the stories you've heard from Ohioans that have impacted you most regarding informed consent and medical freedom. Have you heard stories from anybody on vaccine injury or any kind of medical problems or issues, or where they didn't feel they had informed consent or were bullied or anything like that?
Actually, one of the top issues I've heard from not only constituents, but my own circle of friends and family was with the vaccinations. It felt like most of the constituents were leaning towards getting bullied. And I mean, they give you consent, but it's not really in a warm, welcoming environment. It's sort of like we're getting bullied for these vaccinations. It's either you get your vaccination for your child, or it's most of the constituents were expressing concerns to me that it's as if these doctors are telling us that they're not going to give us a good physical unless you get these vaccinations. And some of my friends and family expressed these concerns as well. They felt bullied. They didn't feel like they had a choice or medical freedom to decide. It felt like because society was telling them to get these vaccinations that they felt like they were pressured to. And if they were to say no, the doctors would give them these like a negative vibes, kind of like bullying, that if you don't get vaccinations, your child's going to die, which is not the case at all. They don't, but the situation is they're not giving them full information in regards to vaccinations and any details about any studies or what's the medical conditions involved. It's as if they're just bullied into getting vaccinations for their child, even though the parent done their own research and felt like they don't feel like their child needed the vaccinations.
Yeah, it's really a stripping of parental rights, even by the physicians and by the schools in a lot of cases. They're not letting parents know that state allows for all three exemptions. When you're in the doctor's office, we've heard parents have been threatened with CPS. They've been threatened they won't receive a note to give their employer, that they were out of work to go to a doctor visit if they don't vaccinate their child. Various different things like that, just unacceptable behavior, making moms and even in some cases dads cry in the office because they are telling them they are horrible parents, they're a danger to society, they're a danger to their child. It's absolutely unethical. And vaccinations, of course, are not a one size fits all. Nothing is. No medication is, no food is, nothing in this world is one size fits all, except vaccination in the eyes of the doctors and the pharmaceutical lobbyists, and in some cases our government officials who don't seem to understand the concept of bodily autonomy. So I appreciate that you have observed that you are taking that to heart, and that you plan to address that should you take office. So thank you for that. I wonder what you think about Ohio legislators. Do you think they realize that medical freedom is actually defined in the Ohio and U.S. constitutions, covering conscious and religious freedoms and rights to direct one's own medical care? Or do you think that's something it's not even on their radar, or they're just not applying it to vaccines? Or what's your thought?
I feel like they're not applying it to their radar, only because of the concept of what's going on with society right now with the controversial topic of vaccinations and so on and so forth. It feels like they're going towards the world of lobbyists, because those lobbyists are providing their bank for their campaign, right? So it feels like they're going wherever the lobbyists are going. They're not really going where the constituents are going. And you'll have constituents expressing these concerns that I'm feeling bullied at my doctor's office. Can you help me? And it feels like they're giving you a default answer, like, we'll see what's going on and call it a day.
Yeah, we get a lot of these auto-generated responses. Like, why did you even write me back? You know, they just make a full circle, and then they say, basically, have a nice day at the end. And that's not what we want. You know, some of us have children that are damaged beyond repair, that are, you know, our financial burden. They're a burden on the systems. You know, financially we can't afford. We got so many kids on IEPs now. You know, the autism epidemic has skyrocketed, and there's always a reason. There's always some reason for it, but it's never possibly vaccines, even though thousands of parents have afforded and given the story. You know, or different, even various injury stories, whether it be encephalitis or what have you, even things that are documented, you know, with VAERS as being, you know, an issue and have been compensated by the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. It just seems there's a complete denial around the subject. And so it's very hard to make headway. It's hard to be heard by the legislators. In that realm, I'm wondering how you feel about trade organizations influencing policy. What are your opinions on the effects of that?
I feel like the trade organizations who are trying to pretty much increase their profits are typically the ones who's going to be making a voice, because organizations such as yours don't have those resources to try to go above and beyond to influence policymakers to promote vaccinations or, you know, your medical freedom. So with those trade organizations, such as pharmaceutical companies, by the way, they're going to go after policymakers that they know for sure who are going to be a bang for the money pretty much. And it's unfortunate because it leaves the constituents who are genuinely concerned behind. And they're the ones who's voting these policymakers into the office, by the way. And they're the ones who are ultimately the policymakers are supposed to be working for them. But instead, the policymakers are working for lobbyists and trade organizations instead.
Yeah, well, we get a taste of that quite often when we go down to the state house for, you know, with HB 559, and I take a peek at that. They were, you know, trying to require a education for a doctor visit, requiring a doctor visit for you to get an education, even to get a religious exemption, which is completely unconstitutional, but nobody seems to mind. They let, you know, the pharmaceutical industry lobbyists, they let them speak, giving testimony at the American Academy of Pediatrics. None of them were cut off, but when we have, I believe we had 33 parents show up, which is a lot of people showing up for a hearing. Anybody that spent any time at the State House knows that's a lot of people giving up middle of the day, sitting there for hours waiting to speak, and then finding out at the last second, oh, you guys are only going to get 3 minutes. You know, everybody else was heard, but we get 3 minutes, and we're having crying moms tell the story of their vaccine injury, and they're being gavelled. It was a very sad state of affair to be witnessing, and it is very disheartening. So, you know, pretty much as citizens, we're often disheartened to see all the industry lobbyists every time as we go to the State House, like I was telling you. And sometimes it feels like our actions can be a little bit insignificant, although I know they're really not. What would you tell Ohio they could do to make the most impact at the State House?
To keep trying. You are the one who are supplying their paychecks. You are the one who is making your voices heard. It's going to be more concerning if your policymakers aren't listening to you and not responding to you versus you not making a voice at all. If there is no problem, they won't hear no problems. But if you speak out your voice, whether it be at the State House, giving them a phone call, shooting them a letter, or even showing up at their office, it's going to make a bigger impact than you sitting at home, not voting, not doing anything about the issue that you're concerned about. So if you could, of course, work with organizations, come together as a group. If not, at least you're going as an individual and making your voices heard. Because like you mentioned, just like most other legislative visits or most legislative sessions, when you go there unorganized, alone, or outside of a lobbyist company, they're most likely going to listen to a lobbyist company versus you as an individual or you as a parent. But it's going to look worse on them when you're there to speak up your voice and they won't give you that opportunity to speak your voice out.
Yeah, and we're suspicious as to that being the reason they would no longer allow video footage in the hearings. That started recently. So yeah, you post a couple of Facebook lives of how it goes down in hearings, and all of a sudden, oh, we don't want video footage, you know, because it makes us look bad. And we're like, yeah, because it does look bad. Treat us that way, when we go in to be heard like that. And yet I do think it helps to go in numbers and basically moral of the story is bug the crap out of them until they listen. Never go away. And we hear that it is helping. People say, oh, OAMF's here, but that's a good thing. We want to be a thorn in their side because eventually we hope that it will make a difference. So I just hope I reach out to all Ohioans today. It is your responsibility to vote. We hope you take that seriously, especially the issues of medical freedom and parental rights. We hope you'll make those a top priority when you go to the polls in November, because your vote is power. We've said it many, many times. We don't have money like the lobbyists, but we have votes. And all politicians care about typically is getting reelected and money. So we can certainly affect the election. So Tina, good luck to you in your endeavors. And I really appreciate you giving us your time today. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your time today.